Hello, and welcome to the Connecticut Digital Archive, a video tutorial. This video tutorial is intended for those who are thinking about becoming participants in the CTDA. This is a companion video to the presentation called Welcome to the Connecticut Digital Archive. Now, this video doesn't present everything in this presentation, so I would encourage you to go look at it when you have time. Now, before we start, I just want to show you where I was able to find that presentation. If you navigate to our primary website, collections.ctdigitalarchive.org, and scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll find news and information. These are links to presentations, how-to documents, video tutorials, calendars, newsletters, and so much more. So for example, you can sign up for our newsletter, which comes out monthly, or you can check out our flyer, or perhaps you're a developer and want to learn more about the infrastructure of CTDA. So for example, to get to the Welcome to the CTDA presentation, I just click on Presentations and then find the one named Welcome to the CTDA. So what is the CTDA? The CTDA is a program hosted by the University of Connecticut Library in collaboration with the Connecticut State Library. It provides long-term preservation services for Connecticut-based nonprofit institutions such as libraries, museums, or historical societies. These services include providing the technical infrastructure, end-user support, and allowing participants to add and manage their digital content in a repository. What does this mean for CTDA and you? Essentially, the CTDA offers participating institutions the wherewithal to take responsibility for their digital content. In other words, to become data stewards and data owners for their digital content without having to worry about the technical hardware and software to preserve their content in an online environment. Participating institutions become digital stewards of their content, and this means that the participants create the workflows, involve the people in their institution, as well as select what content goes into the repository that fits their needs as well as their user needs. So I'm just skipping ahead here, and of course you can always view this later on. But let's go back to the Connecticut Digital Archive. You'll notice that this is a website, and this is our primary outlet for all of the content that goes into the one repository. However, this is not the only site associated with CTDA. You'll notice that some of the larger institutions, such as UConn Library Archives and Special Collections or the Connecticut State Library, have their own websites. Let's take a look at UConn's. So here you'll notice a similar block down at the bottom, but also the same image gallery as that is the Connecticut Digital Archive. However, you'll notice that the content is slightly different, and this is because for UConn's Archives and Special Collections, only their content is being displayed in this site. In the Connecticut Digital Archive, all the content from all the participants are being displayed. So how many sites do we have? We have approximately 5 sites. And if we look at participants, you can see that there's a site for our general CTA collections, University Archives and Special Collections, the Connecticut State Library, Connecticut History Illustrated, Trinity College, and Bibliomation. So I wasn't far off. It's actually 6 sites that present information. So in our case, everything is taking content from one location, which we will call a repository, and it is being displayed in 6 different places. Actually, it's being displayed in more places because the harvesting tool for the state of Connecticut, called Research It, gets our metadata and displays it in their discovery platform, and soon we will be in the Digital Public Library of America. So if we have one repository but different websites, and these websites present content that are specific to certain institutions, how do we do that? And that's an excellent question. Essentially, all institutions receive what we could call like a zip code or a postal code, and that official name is called namespaces. And essentially, it's just a number. And where do we find that number? If we click from our main web page on namespaces, you'll see that next to each one of these numbers is an institution. And sometimes some of the larger institutions have decided to break up their content even further and assign specific namespaces in their range to specific content. So a good example is University of Connecticut Archives and Special Collections. Their general content goes into 20,002. Research data, because they're a university, gets 20,003. Library records, this is actually records for the University of Connecticut, goes in 20,004. Promotion and tenure records for faculty goes in 20,005. And so you'll see this entire list, and we have quite a few namespaces. So when you're thinking about becoming a participant and you get your login for our sandbox, you will also get a namespace. So, and just like if you're writing a letter to someone about something that you want to write about, you will have to know what your namespace is. Now, not to worry, you can always go to our main website and then click on namespaces and just copy and paste this. And we'll see why this is important later on. So let's go off to our sandbox site and see how the CTDA works. Here's our sandbox site. This sandbox is used for testing purposes only, and you need to get a user account and password from CTDA at uconn.edu. So you just can't log in without a user account. So let me log in, and I'm going to log in as guest. When you log in, you are always brought to your user account page, and there's always a View and Edit tab. Here is my user account or my username, and it always gives me the history for how long I've been in the system. If I click Edit, this will bring me to a window where I can change my password, I can change my email, I can upload a picture that's associated with my user account. Now remember, this picture will not go into the repository. This is part of the content management system. And if you're used to perhaps WordPress, and this is Drupal, then you'll know if you post blogs, a lot of times you have a little profile picture associated with a user. So we really don't use the content management system in this way, but you are more than welcome to upload a picture that is associated with your user account. So for any changes you make anywhere in the system, including your user account, remember to scroll all the way to the bottom and click Save, Update, Next, Ingest, or whatnot. We didn't make any changes, so we don't need to save anything. We could click on View to go back to where we were. We could also click on what are called the breadcrumbs and Guest. Let's do that. And here we are back to where we began. If I want to go to the front page, click Simp on CTDA. And here I am back to the front page, which is the front page when I logged in. If I scroll down, you'll see I have three options. Let's navigate to collections. So right now I'm looking at the repository thanks to a display mechanism from the content management system. What does this mean exactly? The repository really can't display in this fancy way repository objects. So Drupal, our content management system, thanks to some plugins created by the Islandora Foundation, allows us to see what's in the repository in a nice kind of visual manner. And so here you'll notice a bunch of folders. Avon Historical Homes, Becky's Second Test Collection, etc. Right now we're looking at the repository as a whole. So in a sense, we've sort of opened up the file drawer and now we're looking at all the folders, and maybe some of those folders have other folders within them or simply content. So let's take a look at one. Let's take a look at Avon. And I just simply double click on it. Notice that in the breadcrumbs, I've gone from the front page to looking at all of the collections to now I'm looking at the folder or the collection called Avon Historical Homes, which has an image called Test 1 in it. So it only has one image. And if I click on that, or I go to that image, you'll notice that my breadcrumbs are from the front page, digital collections, into the Avon Historical Homes collection, and now I'm looking at the image called Test 1. And here's a description, really cool stuff. It's in the collection Avon Historical Homes, and the details are, well, rather vague, but the title is Test 1, the still image is the genre, and it's held by the Avon Public Library. So right now, I am looking at digital content, or what I like to call a digital asset. Before, I was looking at a collection that can actually have digital content in it or other sub-collections. And you'll notice that these tabs, View and Manage, are always the same. So if I click on Test 1 again, I still have View and Manage. If I navigate to just looking at the entire repository, I still have View and Manage. Now, why is this? Because essentially, I can actually access what is called the dashboard or the administrative kind of functions at any level. So for example, if I want to add a collection at this level, then I would click Manage. But let's say I want to create a sub-collection in the Bill Memorial collection. Then I would click here and then click Manage. But let's create a test collection at the top level. So what does this mean? Remember when I talked about opening up the file cabinet? So I actually want to add a folder at the same level as the other folders, which means that I would see it here. So let's click Manage. And here you'll notice this is my dashboard. And no matter where I open this Manage, I will pretty much see a similar array of functions. This overview just tells me what's in this collection. So here I have 18 sub-collections, or 18 actually collections in the repository. Data streams, this is just a fancy word for information. Right now I'm looking at a GUI representation of all the bits and pieces of information that are pertinent to the top level repository. So We won't go into that now because it might not make sense at this view. So let's do overview. And then let's create our top level collection for us. So add an object to this collection. So we want to add a collection and click Next. This is where your namespace is really important. Because we work with many institutions, you have to create what is called the local identifier for your collection in this system. That is always your namespace. So for example, 20,002, which is Yukon Archives and Special Collections, colon. And then you put in any alphanumeric string. Now let's put in my initials and let's say the date. And I just put in the year and the month. Now, this alphanumeric string has to be unique. Also, there can't be any spaces. You can put in underscore, you can put in hyphen, but no spaces. So what do a lot of people do? For example, Yukon Archives and Special Collections, when they create a new collection, they put in their namespace, colon, and then the manuscript number for that collection. That way they know it's always unique. But I would suggest using a system that fits your needs and that works well for you. You always want to uncheck inherent collection policy. Why is that? Now remember I said we work with many institutions? Look at all these numbers. So you always want to make sure that you select the namespace that you are working with. Right now I'm working with Yukon Archives and Special Collections general namespace. If I was working with CHS, then I would have to change this to 4. If I was working with Mystic, then I'd have to change this to 5. So let's stick with Yukon Archives and Special Collections. So now you'll notice this thing called allowable content models. So let's take a step back. Islandora, which is actually the primary technology that allows us to add and manage content in the repository, helps us out by being what I call format driven in terms of modeling content. So what does it mean to model content? So when you're working in the repository and when you're adding content to the repository, especially through Islandora, you're not just moving an image from your local computer or your server to another server. The system is actually analyzing the format of your content. It is creating lots of preservation information, such as derivatives. Now, what are derivatives? Derivatives are actually, let's say you put in a TIFF. So it's a medium-sized image that is used for users to download, so they don't download your original image. It is a thumbnail that's displayed when you see it on the page. Remember test 1? That was a thumbnail we were viewing. And then we also have things like technical metadata that's being extracted from the image. This includes information on the scanner, maybe when it was scanned, and all of that great information. And then the system will also create access policies, perhaps. For example, do you need to embargo your material? Do only certain people need to see it? And things like that. But of course, this is format driven, especially in terms of how we view and what derivatives are created. So audio files can't be viewed in the same way as PDF files. That's kind of normal. So Islandora helps us out, but we also have to help out Islandora, which means that we have to know how we would like to model our content. So let's go to our presentation. What does this mean? It means that we have to think about what viewer we would like to call, the derivatives that are being created, the object properties, as well as so much more. And actually, Islandora only has a set of ways to model content. The easiest is collection. And actually, this isn't linked to format. It basically says, I want to create a collection. This is something that we're doing right now. But when you create a collection, you have to say, well, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to put in photos? Do you want to put in more sub collections? So you have to tell the system beforehand what you want to do. Now, don't worry, you can always add on content models to your collection. So, for example, if you start with PDF and then you have TIFFs, you can always go into the dashboard and add this content model. So as you'll see here, I'm at the presentation, Welcome to the CTDA, and this is the list of content models. And here you can see if you have a TIFF, you want to select large image. If you have a GIF, basic image. If you have an MP3, it's audio. And so this is a nice list, kind of a cheat sheet for you. And notice that, for example, PDF, you can put in document, or you can put into the PDF. So let's go back to our browse collection. So right now we are in the middle of creating a top level collection called, we haven't given it a name yet. So we're just deciding on what should go into that collection. Excuse me. So I would like to put in some JPEGs. Let's create some sub collections. How about, I don't want to do video right now. Compound is kind of like if you have a postcard and you have the front and back of a postcard. It's basically a whole to parts model. Binary is for a format that isn't listed. So zip files is a good example. Don't pay attention to the annotation content model. This is the sandbox, and we test a lot beyond the core functionality. So everything's kind of turned on in this system. If you would like to play around with it, you can certainly just click on it and see what happens. Let's do PDF. Notice that newspaper, what's this? You have issue, page, and if I go down, I have content. And let's click all three. And I think I'm going to stop there. So once I've made my selection, then I click Next. And now I get to this data entry form. What is Connecticut History Illustrated? It's just simply Connecticut History Online with its new name. So if you would like content to appear in this site, remember I said that there's different sites in CTDA? You can quickly say yes, or you can say no. You can always change your mind. World War I is a channel that was requested by the Connecticut State Library. So I'm not going to focus on metadata right now, but let's just put in a title for our test collection. My first test collection. Notice I just typed that into this box. If I scroll down, I can enter information on creator. So here I'm a person. Let's say I wanted, for example, John Smith, creator. That's not me, but I'm just putting this as an example. Genre terms, at the collection level, this might not make sense, but if you are creating a collection in terms of, let's say you organize your content by content type, so if this is a collection simply for photographs, you could do photographs. If the content, perhaps a start date and an end date or a single date, otherwise you can always go down. Be careful of the held by. This is the name of your institution. I'm just going to put CTDA. and ingest. Now remember, I really had to scroll down to the bottom for this. It does take a while. This is because it's creating what is called an information packet. So here, notice that I have home, digital collections, my first collection. So let's go up to digital collections using the breadcrumbs. And here it is, my first collection. Notice that it appears alphabetically in this grid-like view. Let's click on it. If I click Manage, notice that the collection is empty. I haven't added anything to my collection, so this is normal. If I click on Data Streams, remember, is just a fancy word for information. This is information bits or pieces about my collection. So it's kind of like writing on a vanilla folder. Perhaps your folder has a name. Perhaps you want to say when it was created and give a description for it. This is contained in the mods. Mods is just a metadata standard that allows you to describe anything, and it could be a collection or actually a digital asset. This is Dublin Core. This is the thumbnail. So what is the thumbnail? In this case, if I navigate back to digital collections, the thumbnail is this folder. So for example, I could actually replace the thumbnail by clicking on Manage, Data Streams, looking at thumbnail, and then replace. Now I do have to replace it with a JPEG, and I'm not sure if I have any. Oh, I do. Well, we're going to have, oh, that's pretty. Let's choose this. So I just selected the file I wanted. You press Upload, and then Add Contents. So this green check means that it did it, but how do I really know? Let's navigate through the breadcrumbs again to digital collections. And look at that. Isn't that awesome? So if I click on it again and then click Manage to access my dashboard, Data Streams to get to the information, notice it's still called Thumbnail. So what is RELS-X? That's basically kind of the audit information by the system. You can take a look at it, but you can't do anything to it. The collection policy is linked to what can be put into this collection. Now remember, we selected basic image, PDF. What else did we pick? Well, let's take a look at this tab called Collection. And here we are. Here's a list of the content models. So if I start scrolling down, here's basic, collection, PDF, newspaper, and the 2002 is always selected. So if I would like to add more, so for example, large image, all I would do is click on this, make sure that the namespace is correct for my institution, scroll all the way down, and click Update Collection Policy. But let's go back to Overview. Let's add something to our collection because right now it's pretty bare bones. So all I do, let me go back to the view, just click Manage, add an object to this collection. Let's do basic image, and notice here that I have a selection. So everything that I selected for my content models that are allowed for this collection will show up on this list. So if I want to add audio, notice that it's not here. So I would have to navigate to Manage and then the tab called Collection and enable the audio content model. But right now I just want to do a JPEG. So I click Basic and Next. Oh, sorry about that. And here I fill out the form. So my JPEG image. So this is just a title which is required. I don't know who created it, so there's no person, corporate, or anything like that. I'm going to leave that blank. It is an image. There's no genre. I'm going to leave that. I don't know when it was created. Um, I'm going to leave those just empty. Here we're going to put in CTDA. Everything with a red is required, so be careful of that. And the rights, I'll just say in public domain right now. And click Next. Let's choose our file, upload, and then ingest. And here you are. There it is. So, my JPEG image, and there's my JPEG image. Now let's say that I really dislike my title. Not to worry. Just click Manage to access your dashboard, Data Streams, and then with the mods, which is your descriptive metadata, click Edit, which will bring you back to the form, and just say cool stars, for example. Scroll all the way down to the bottom and click Update. And here you are, cool stars. Now let's go back to Manage. Notice here I have a few other options. I can migrate or share this object. So what's the difference? Migrate actually moves it from this collection to another collection. Share means this object will appear in this collection as well as another collection. Overview, it basically just tells you the parent collection. Data streams, here is what we call the PID. So remember, it's always the namespace colon and this number. So this is an internal number for Fedora. It is not the persistent link that you share with users, for example. In this system, we don't have it, but it's called the handle, which is the same technology as the digital object identifier. So RELSX, remember, that's just kind of the internal information that is system generated. Mods, or metadata object description schema, this is actually the descriptive information, and it's the only one you can edit. Dublin Core is descriptive information, but this is what is shared with things like discovery platforms like ResearchIt. OBJ, notice this is the file that I uploaded. TechMD, this is just technical metadata that has been extracted from this file. The thumbnail is just a smaller image of this JPEG, and the medium sized is used for download. Now notice that this cool stars has what are called a lot of data streams, or just a lot of pieces of information. And all of this means is that cool stars can be described of where it fits into the repository, how you select to describe it, which is then pushed out to other discovery services such as ResearchIt or DPLA. Of course, your original digital master, which is preserved through two derivatives in this case, as well as technical metadata. If I go back to my first test collection, so right now I'm looking at the collection or the folder, and I click Manage, and then Data Streams. Notice that there are a lot less information pieces in this. There's still a PID, and this is the PID that you typed in. There's still the internal system information, as well as the description that you typed in for this folder or this collection. The Dublin Core that can be shared with discovery services outside, the thumbnail. Here we have something that we didn't find with the digital asset of that JPEG, and it's a collection policy. And the reason for that is that you put stuff in a collection. You don't put stuff in your image or your newspaper. That kind of makes sense. So if you have a folder of content, you can put another folder into a folder, but not another folder into a photograph. So it's the same kind of approach as to an archive box, for example. Notice also that there is nothing called OBJ because, quite simply, this is a collection, not actually a digital content. So it's basically a folder with some information associated to it, such as a description and a title, so that people can understand what's in this collection. And also for you, you can manage the formats that people can add to this collection. So this is why organizing your content becomes very important. And organizing content in this universe means, how do you model your content? So the question you have to ask is, what are the file formats of your content? And how would you like those to appear, not only to yourself, but also to your users? So do you want a collection called the photograph collection? So do it by format type. Or perhaps you would like to do letters, so it's more like a genre type. Or perhaps you need to have a collection, and within that collection, many sub-collections. For example, letters can have letters by date, or they can have letters by geographic location, for example. All of those questions are decided by you. So the organization of your content in this digital repository, in this space, let's go back to view, is up to you. So for example, here I just added an image, but you could also add sub-collections, and that's up to you. Of course, if you don't like your original organization, you can always change it. Remember I showed you that migrate or share? If I'm at the collection level, I still have share members as well as migrate members. Now here I just have one member, or I've just added one digital asset to my collection so far. But here's an interesting thing. So collection allows me to update the collection policy, but I can also share members one or more than one at a time. I can also migrate them, or I can delete individual members. Now let's say my collection was a bust and I just really didn't like what I did, or I need to get rid of it. You can click on Properties and just say Delete Collection. Now be careful, this is kind of the nuclear option. If you delete the collection, it will delete the collection and everything in it. So you're taking that entire folder and kind of putting it in the trash can. So you better make sure this is something you really want to do. So let's view and go back to the welcome to the CTDA. So what's happening here? So let's go back. Everything is an object. What we were looking at was an object in the repository. And notice this object, and let me just make this bigger. Everything has what is called a data stream, and it also has a pin as well as a Dublin core as well as internal metadata for the system. This collection can have either sub-collections or objects that are digital assets. And what's the difference? Collections don't have what are called OBJs, they just have description. So let's go back and see what that looks like. Notice it just has a collection policy, but no OBJ. Whereas the image has this OBJ as well as some extra goodies for preservation. And basically, that's the difference. So notice that to get to that visual representation of this object, which can be either a collection or a digital asset, I always click Manage and then Data Streams. And remember, data streams is just a fancy word for information, but it's also where you'll be working a lot because this is where you will edit the description of your digital assets. And you can also regenerate some of the derivatives if need be. You can also click Properties. Now remember, I'm at Cool Stars, so I'm already at an object, and I can permanently remove it or regenerate it. So notice here that I have several ways of doing things. I can share or migrate this at this level, or I can go up to my collection using the breadcrumbs, click Manage, and then this tab Collection, and share and migrate members here. And basically, that's it. So the important thing is to learn how to model content differently. Some content models are easier than others. So what does this mean? So for example, I just added an image, but let's talk about a book. So a book is a little complex. I actually have to create the book, and then I have to add pages. So let's do that. Let's create Manage. Remember, add an object to this collection. Oh, wait, I don't have book here. There's nothing that says book. So here's my first instance of I didn't set up my collection to accept this type of content model. So let's hit the back button. Let's hit collection, and we're just simply going to add it. So I'm going to add page, because remember the book is the book content model, and the pages. And here there's 2002 and 2002. Make sure it's your namespace. Scroll all the way down and update collection policy. Yay! So now let's add an object to this collection. And remember, I want to do book, Internet Archive book content model. And next. So right now I'm describing my book. So super book. And I'm not going to focus on the metadata right now. I'm just going to, I do have to be careful of what's required. If I don't fill out what's required, then the form will stop me. So let's do this. So let me leave this one empty just to show you what happens. I click Next, and notice I get this red mark, Rights is required. So let me scroll down to Rights. And notice that it's been highlighted in red, and I'm just going to put in public domain and click Next. This next field, it brings me to PDF. So what you're seeing here is actually with the book, you can do zipped pages or one page at a time, or you can actually load a PDF. So these settings, page image, page OCR, excuse me, relate to the PDF only. And I wouldn't suggest adding a PDF. PDFs tend to be quite large, and it does tax the system. What it does is it breaks apart each one of the pages in the PDF, and then it creates all of the derivatives as well as OCR or machine readable text. So sometimes it does catch up and it gets a little quirky. I would suggest scrolling down to the bottom and just click Ingest. So we're creating an empty container for the book. And here is the Internet Archive book viewer. Now we need some pages. Let's click Manage. And notice I have this book. So when I was at the collection level and I clicked Manage, I had collection. Here I have book. When you're working with newspaper, you'll find issue in here. So content models do have specific functionality related to them. If I click on book, I can add zip pages. Let's say I want to add 20 pages. I can also add just one page. So let's just add a page. Notice that I can add a TIFF, JPEG, or JP2. I happen to have a lot of JPEGs, so I'm just going to, this is not a good example because this is an image, so it is going to do OCR. which actually you can select to do OCR, or in this case, I'm actually not going to, which you can do as well. So this is Danish, Frank, German. Uh, this is a different type of German, English, French, Hindi, Italian, Old Italian, Japanese, Portuguese, Russian. I don't know what that is. Spanish, Old Spanish, and let's just do not perform OCR. Um, if you do want to know what some of these are, you can just go off and Google Tesseract OCR, and it will give you a list of what those are. So I've added my page. I'm just doing one page. If you do a zip file, you just click Add Zipped File. You search for that file. You click Upload, and you'll still have Do Not Perform OCR if you would like that choice, or select the language in which the pages are, and just ingest. So right now it's just creating kind of all the information pieces associated with that page. Here we won't have an OCR, but in general you'll have also an information, remember, data stream for OCR as well. That lives at the page level and not the book level. So here it really doesn't make sense, but I can return to book view. And well, I have one page that really isn't a page. So if I click manage and then data streams, here notice that, I didn't do OCR, but let's say I did OCR, it wouldn't appear at this level. However, if I click on book and I do perform OCR, I can aggregate OCR to the parent. What that means is it brings it up into this information package for this object as well. Maybe overkill, but not really. I can always add a page. For example, I can add zip pages. I can create images. I can change the page regression, reorder, or delete pages. I can also create a PDF. So let's just view. If I click on the pages, I can also see the individual pages one by one. And here I can manage. Now notice if I click on data streams to see all the various bits of information, notice that there's a lot. There's a rels int. This is just saying that this is page 1 instead of page 2. And if I change the order, this piece of information will record that. There's always a PDF created, technical metadata, here's the OBJ, and it has all of this information. The OCR also lives at the page level. Now notice that in this system, I have pages, I also have a book. So actually the book acts like a container or a collection for pages. Now the difference is that because of the way that Islandora allows us to model content, it allows us to model it in terms of sequence. So it's not just a collection like any other collection. It's a collection in which the pages have an order. So let's view. How do I know I'm at a page? Well, it has this file name, which is kind of icky, but you'll see return to book view, and I can just simply do that. So that's basically adding a book. So if I want to add other things, all I do is manage, add an object to this collection. So that is the way to singly upload things into the repository. And you can check that when you want. So let's go back to our main web page and go back to oops, not that one. Sorry about that. Our video tutorials. So here we have creating a TEI file, mods and controlled vocabulary, finding namespaces and other tips, how to delete an object, how to batch import, how to ingest a manuscript, how to ingest a newspaper, a book, audio, how to add a new content model, how to ingest a video, how to create a compound, and view 6 more. So you can see that we have a lot of information that you can follow through as you're doing this. So basically, that is CTDA in a nutshell. So let's go back to what participants do and the CTDA. So the CTDA provides this infrastructure that you don't have to worry about. So if you want this image to appear in Connecticut History Illustrated, all you have to do is select yes in that form. You don't have to worry. However, you have to figure out how you want to organize your content online. Also, you have to figure out if Superbook is an appropriate title for your Superbook. And if you don't like that, you can always change that by Manage, Data Streams, and then editing this right here to call it Super Galaxy, for example. And of course, for any changes, you update that. So it really is up to the participating institutions to, one, prepare content for ingest. This means that everything that you do in order to get into the system has to be done locally by you. So if you have TIFFs that maybe have been corrupted, you will have to check those and then actually either rescan them or maybe change them to a different format. If you have metadata that you have in spreadsheets, then you're going to have to change that metadata. Our system doesn't accept spreadsheets. It actually accepts either a single upload through the form, so you can copy and paste the information from the spreadsheet into the form. There is a batch ingest, but it requires that you be familiar with what is called XML, or Extensible Markup Language, as well as the schema of MODs, Metadata Object Description. And schema is kind of like a dictionary and grammar in XML. So if you're not familiar with those, then probably single object ingest is the best way. But you'll have to also decide what gets loaded into the repository, and does everything stay over time. And of course, you can decide who works on projects and who don't, and who doesn't. So as you'll notice, I didn't talk about other things that are in this presentation. There's the primary technologies, which I pretty much overlooked, as well as the vocabulary of Fedora and Islandora terminology. But you can see that pretty much now you know a little bit more of what it means to become a participant, as well as what CTDA has to offer. So once you have the tutorial, and once someone has done an in-person or virtual training with you, you can always decide to become a participant of CTDA. And for that, you go into policies and make sure that you understand the memorandum of understanding, our policies, and contact designation form. If you go forward, then you would sign the MOU and the contact designation form. And we would have another in-person training, and then you would get to add content in our repository. And of course, before that, you can always check out our services and of course, read our policies. You're also more than welcome to contact our participants. And here we have a list. You can also say contact us. So I know this has been really quick, but hopefully you've gained a better understanding of the CTDA and a little bit of how to add and manage content in our system. Let's log out. So if you would like to become a participant and want to learn more, just contact us at ctda@uconn.edu. So let me go to a very end of this presentation. And here it is, ctda@uconn.edu. And if you have questions about other resources, you can always go to our main website and click on the links here. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll be hearing from you soon. Bye.